Merry New Year!
Happy New Year. In this country, we say Happy New Year.
When Adam had lived 130 years, he became the father of a son in his own likeness, according to his image, and named him Seth. So Adam, Adam, red earth, that is blood and dust. Okay, here's something important to understand. Red earth. There have been pre-Adamite people in the past that have said what this means is that Adam was white, and so you could see his skin blush.
The Hebrew word Adam, rendered Adam in the English, is from a root word meaning to be of a ruddy complexion, showing blood in the face. A word obviously not applicable to the dark races, which we also know from scientific evidence to be much older than the white race.
And the facts show, my friends, that the races that are older than the white race, such as the Negroes, the Polynesians, and the Aborigines of Australia and Southeast Asia, they have learned planting and cultivating of grains, herbs, fruits, and domestication of animals after coming in contact with the Adamic race in the past 6,000 years.
And they'll say, so the world was full of savages, and then with Adam we have the creation of the white man. And that's not what it means. What it means, red earth, it means God formed Adam from the dust of the ground, but when he breathed into him the breath of life, he was infused with blood, and life is in the blood. That's the meaning. Adam, red earth, that's the meaning. Blood and dust. That's the idea. Adam. And then Seth, C. Seth means appointed. Appointed. C note N. This is a very early proto-messianism. And this comes from a time long before there was a messianic expectation for the nation. In fact, that concept was only fully developed during the Babylonian exile, and they knew this important messianic figure would restore the nation following the Babylonian captivity. Well, this is long before that, but there was a proto-messianism in the earliest times. Even the name that Adam gave his wife, Eve, plays into this early proto-messianism. But Seth is a very, very early indication of this. In fact, what do I say here? Note, the Adenic clan continued under a sacerdotal commission. Sacramental, sacerdotal. This has to do with a priestly role. A priestly position that this Edenic clan served in comparison to the rest of mankind that had already lived on the earth for a couple 100,000 years. And that's who was created in Genesis 1. Not this Edenic people, this was a priestly people. And that's the image that Seth retained from his father. The Edenic clan continued under a sacerdotal commission and mission to restore the priesthood to the Garden Temple. And that's what the Garden of Eden really was, a temple made without hands. But it was a temple, and that's why the tabernacle is patterned after it. All during the wilderness wanderings, they were trying to get back to this place where the garden was. And Solomon built a permanent temple structure right there on that spot. That marks where the garden was, right there. The restoration of the Axis Mundi by one N. That's that same note. Maybe I'll read that in a minute. But the restoration of the Axis Mundi by one is the central theme of the Holy Bible. The Edenic clan failed in this mission when the court convened, note V, and decreed judgment. Her sacerdotal commission was exchanged for the regal commission of general mankind. Genesis 9, 1-7. And that's pretty important to understand too. When Noah and sons disembarked the ark, they lose this priestly role. And of course, the garden was destroyed. And this is exchanged for the regal commission of mankind in general, to go reign over the earth and subdue it, and to exercise dominion over the rest of the creation. This is mankind's regal commission. That comes from chapter 1. And that's what the rest of mankind held. So you have to notice that transition occurring in Genesis chapter 9. But this central theme of the Bible, yes, this comes out in the second Adam. Jesus, the Messiah, the second Adam. He's to be much more than the King of Israel when he returns and brings in the kingdom era, fulfilling his messianic role as the king of the nation. Well, he's much more than that. He's the second Adam to restore the whole cosmos. That's above and beyond his messianic role. That's why people had trouble understanding him when he was teaching them. He was going to do much more than his messianic role. It's the second Adam. That's why his miracles were always healing and bringing abundance to the people. It's his role as the second Adam. So he was going to be much more than Messiah in that sense, in his role as the second Adam, and he would be much more than Messiah in the sense that he's made the one Lord over the whole earth. He's displaced the gods of the nations and sat down at the right hand of God, making him the one Lord over the whole earth, that all nations should serve him. Okay, so Adam here, you'll notice his dates of birth and death. He was formed from the dust in 3811, but 69 years later, just short of 70, is when the fall occurred. So his mortal life ran from 3742 BC to 2812 BC, and he died.
Beef jerky time.
That's why he lived to be 930 years. Because with this 69 years serving in the garden, he lived to be 999 years, just short of the 1,000 years. That's just my little theory on that, about how long paradise lasted. The Axis Mundi, originally, 69 years. Seth then lived from 3612 BC to 2700 BC. His son, Enosh, that name means mortal man. And I think the reason is because he lived a little shorter a lifespan than was expected. He lived about 6 or 7 years less than he should have. And he lived from 3507 BC to 2602 BC. And his son, Canaan, their smith. There was smithing on both sides. There was smithing in Cain's lineage, and there was smithing in Seth's lineage. Why are we told about this? I don't know. There's some things I haven't quite figured out there yet. Then his son, Mahalalel, how do you say that?
Strong's H 4111. Mahalalel.
Which means praise of God. He lived from 3347 BC to 2452 BC. Note, every name of a man or woman prior to the Babel dispersion is not to be understood as the actual personal name of the individual in history. It's not their historical name, but rather Moses ascribed meaningful eponyms to each individual. This is absolutely proven in the case of Peleg, who, according to the priestly gloss, was termed such because in his day was the earth divided. See page 7, Genesis 10:25, note F. This is important. We know from Peleg that the names Moses ascribes to all these people before the Babel dispersion, they have a sort of an encoded meaning. They're not the historical names of people. They are eponyms. Here I say a clear picture of pre-flood circumstances in Eden may emerge if the correct meanings of particular names be deciphered. What do I mean by that? I mean that if each of these names in here could be correctly understood, correctly deciphered, then we would have an idea of just what was going on in Eden all during this time. The next one on the list is Jared, and his name means descent. See 6.4 note W on this page. And he lived from 3282 to 2435 BC. And I put this in red because that's the year of the flood. Jared was killed in the flood. His son Enoch, whose name means dedicated, CC, this plays into that proto-messianic role, that proto-messianic theme of the One. Enoch, and he lived from 3220 BC to 2855 BC. Now he was killed by Lamech. And if you want the details on that, see page 2, 423, note AB. And there is also an important note on this on appendix page 1 of the book. So check that out too. Now, here are some details down here pertaining to Enoch that I'm sure everyone would find interesting. Enoch walked with God. And here is an important note from Dillman explaining how that language means that Enoch was in the garden of God. He walked with God. Noah walked with God. Noah was the last one in the garden of God. And then it was destroyed in the flood. But Enoch was in the garden. That's important to understand. Jewish myth developed an idea that Enoch was taken to heaven and became Metatron. And Jesus in his ministry uses polemic upon that notion. He says, no man's ascended to heaven but the Son of Man. These type of statements are his way of saying, I'm here to be the true Metatron. It's anti-Enochian polemic in Christ's ministry. How about that? And here are some amazing statements about Enoch from the Jewish perspective. This comes from Osterley's Wisdom of Sirach, that's Ecclesiasticus, page 300. These are notes he has at that point. It's on chapter 44, 16 to 18, the praise of Enoch and Noah. Well, down through here, you will have several references to important thoughts on Enoch by various rabbis. And down here in the note, Osterley gets into how Enoch is identified with Metatron. Metatron, the throne sharer. Okay, so that's important stuff there. And this is an important book, Wisdom of Sirach. In this note here, Book of Jubilees 423, you can see this important concept. And Enoch was taken from amongst the children of men, and we conducted him into the Garden of Eden in majesty and honor. That's really where Enoch was taken. Then we come to Methuselah. They died. The name means they died. He lived from 3155 to 2435 BC. Killed in the flood. And Lamech, Noah's father, his name means for humiliation, made low, disappointed. Very important. It's also important to understand why the Lamech in Cain's lineage has this name. He was disappointed as well. But this is important. Lamech, disappointed. He named his son Noah rest, which plays into that proto-messianic theme. He named his son Rest because he would bring us rest from the curse on the land. He was disappointed. Noah came preaching judgment and not rest to the land. And Lamech lived from 3088 to 2435 BC, killed in the flood. Then we come to Noah, rest. And Noah lived from 3035 to 2085 BC. So he survived through the flood. And you can make that out in this little diagram up here. You can see the people living and dying. But then when we come up here, look at this. Jared, Methuselah, and Lamech die in the flood. Then Noah and family survive through it. This is the picture that emerges when you follow the Samaritan Pentateuch. According to the Samaritan Pentateuch, certain lifespans are a little different. There's just a few verses that change, and you get this cleaner picture that emerges. And it's probably the right way of looking at it. Let's see, Dillman, Volume 1, 220. Let me look that up. Here's where Dillman speaks to this. He says, after impartial consideration, one must above all acknowledge the relative originality of the Samaritan. Because 1, it most consistently makes a steady decrease in the age of each succeeding patriarch. 2, in it, the principles applied in calculating the particular numbers are clearest. 3, the divergences of the 3 texts in the case of the 6th, 8th, and 9th members can be simply explained only on the supposition of the priority of the Samaritan, not of the Hebrew, for the Hebrew has the Samaritan as its presupposition, while the Septuagint has the Samaritan and the Hebrew. And 4th, in especial, the changes of the Hebrew with reference to Jared, Methuselah, and Lamech rest upon a desire to lengthen the whole period down to the flood by 349 years, which, in turn, is explained by the adherence to a chronological system according to which 2,666 years have elapsed by the time of the Exodus from Egypt. But here, Dillman argues for the superiority of the Samaritan Pentateuch when considering these genealogies, okay? And I actually direct people to Dillman's book in a note over here on the page. That is how this works out, though, and we end up seeing something like this. And it just makes a lot more sense that there was a lot of death right at the flood. Makes a lot of sense. Now here's this note N on the 1. Early Messianism. Maybe I should change this to say Proto-Messianism. Doesn't really matter, though. Compare page 2, note W. 4:1, note N. 4:25, 5:3. I go through a bunch of verses here. I could talk about that some other time. Okay, note Q here. Drowning of Lamech. People don't know about this. that Noah's father died in the flood. He didn't get on the ark. He didn't believe Noah's message of judgment. He thought, no, God's bringing rest to the land. And he did not evade the flood. He was killed in the flood. 7:6. Genesis 7:6. The implication of verses 28, 30, and 31 per the Samaritan Pentateuch, that is in chapter 5 here. We're in chapter 5, verse 28, 30, and 31. Per the Samaritan Pentateuch, is that Lamech died the year of the flood. His name, disappointed, indicates judgment rather than the rest and deliverance he sought in Noah. Compare 2 Peter 2:5. Now here's something interesting a lot of people don't know. Shem, his name, means name, and that has tremendous significance when you know what you're looking for. Ham, his name means hot. Hot or warm, but hot is really what it means. This is a southern location generally. And then look at what Japheth means. His name means opened or wide. Wide dispersion. The islands of the Gentiles, that's a way of referring to all these little islands off the coast of Greece. And so Japheth, his name has to do with what happened to his descendants at the Babel dispersion. Same with Ham, hot. Following the Babel dispersion, all his family were down through Canaan and into Egypt. And there were some in Saudi Arabia. Okay? So these are like regional. And then Shem's name, though, this means that Yahweh's purposes will be accomplished through his line. That's why he has this name. And then down here, a little further down the page here, we have important notes. Notes V indicate a session of the divine council. And it's important to pick up on when this is occurring in Scripture. That's what's occurring at the opening of Genesis 6. And a lot of people say, well, we have God here repenting that he had made man on the earth. What's actually going on here, folks, are voices in heaven are discussing this. There were voices in heaven discussing this. It means God and his council were determining what to do, and a decision was made, and a declaration was made to bring about a flood on the earth and destroy everything. And then this note W, it's real important. It has to do with Jared, his name. And this note from Charles, the angels of the Lord descended. Descent. The angels of the Lord descended on the earth. That's why Jared has the name he has. That event happened in his lifetime. Look at appendix page 1 in my book. You'll see it. And you can read down through this note for lots of important details on this particular issue. And it is an excerpt This entire excerpt comes from Charles' Book of Jubilees, pages 33 and 34. But you should read this. Very important information. You should read my book. Read my whole book. It's only 12 pages. Come on. You can handle a 12-page book. Come on. Get to it. Let me know what you think. It could change your life. You never know.